Hello, emerging and evolving leaders. I'm Christine Rozier, host of the Irrelevant Leader podcast and founder of the Leadership Collaborative and Rozier Retreats. My platforms are dedicated to expanding the pool of exceptional leaders. I'm honored to be your leadership expert today. I believe that every person has the potential to become an extraordinary leader, and in doing so, significantly impact the lives of others. Extraordinary leadership begins with mindset. Relevant leaders are committed to developing the qualities necessary to successfully lead others, qualities that are cultivated and refined over time. Throughout the Irrelevant Leader podcast series, some of the world's most relevant leaders and I examine the behaviors and characteristics of irrelevant leaders. Tune in as we dig deep into identifying what goes wrong when a leader moves down the path from powerful leadership to ineffectual leadership. Join me for live call-in sessions, one-on-one interviews, and thought leadership segments as high-profile leaders and I explore what it takes for you to avoid the blight of dreaded irrelevancy and outline how you can achieve and maintain your place among the world's most profound and relevant leaders. Thank you again for listening. Let's get to today's episode. Welcome. Today, I'd like to explore the importance of change agility as a quality of effective leadership. I'd like to dedicate this episode to my young friend, Valentina, who I am certain will be an exceptional leader one day. So what do I mean by change agility? Change agility is the ability to adapt and respond to change in a quick and resourceful way. Developing change agility is crucial and necessary for an organization and its employees to thrive and even survive. There are perhaps thousands of quotes and cliches related to change, and my favorite comes from the Greek philosopher Heraclitus. Quote, "There is nothing permanent except change," end quote. Many of my clients understand that change is constant, but intellectually understanding this does not ensure that you are able to respond to change in an agile and functional way. As a leader, it's important that you identify your own personal relationship to change. If you are not aware of your default responses and related behaviors to change, you will struggle in developing the capabilities necessary in becoming agile. Think of your relationship to change as being on a continuum. On one end, there are those who are change resistant, and on the other end, there is change agility. Ask yourself where your default response to change tends to be on this continuum. Understanding where you are gives you a starting point as you begin to develop your change agility muscle. People often share with me that where they find themselves on the continuum is situational. I completely understand this, and yet when we resist change, no matter what the circumstance, we are setting ourselves and perhaps those around us up for suffering. A good question to ask yourself is, what is the difference during those times when I resist versus those times when I more fully accept and embrace a change? This is a great way to start to identify what actually causes your resistance. The goal is to use the never-ending changing experiences of our lives to develop the ability to respond to change in a more agile manner. So often I hear people say, "I don't like change because I don't know what's going to happen." Change certainly throws us out of our comfort zone and asks us to grow and stretch beyond what feels safe. And that's usually not comfortable. If the goal is to remain comfortable, we do not grow. If the goal is to expand and grow, then being uncomfortable must be an acceptable part of the equation. The truth is, we never know what's going to happen. And while I believe that most people understand this, I don't believe that the majority of people actually believe it. Not liking change is one thing, but being resistant to change is very detrimental. Resistance means that life, business, and everything else is moving forward, and yet you are not. You are stuck in the resistance, which results in being dragged. And being dragged never feels good, and it usually ends up making the situation worse. One sign that you are in resistance is ongoing complaining to anyone and everyone who will listen. It's one thing to offer an opinion about a change, especially if asked, but quite another to endlessly complain. Constant complaining does not change the situation. It is simply a sign that you are being dragged. So how does one move from resistance to change agility? We start by recognizing and accepting the change. This does not mean that we like it, agree with it, or are even ready to embrace the change. It simply means that we acknowledge that the change is occurring, like it or not. Truly accepting a change creates the opportunity for self-awareness to emerge. Self-awareness opens the door to our true feelings, be it anger, sadness, fear, whatever the feeling, so that we can cope with those feelings. Coping with your feelings is the key to moving forward. So it's extremely important that you allow yourself the opportunity to identify and admit your true feelings. You feel how you feel and accept that this is the case. It need not make sense. It need not be rational or logical. It need not be a crowd pleaser. It simply needs to be a recognition of how you feel. Until you actually acknowledge the feelings, you're not able to process those feelings and move forward. Resistance inhibits our ability to process and move through our feelings. Complaining is not the same as acknowledging and accepting. Complaining keeps you stuck in the resistance. If you get into telling yourself how you should feel or how things should be or how others should behave, you've entered back into the land of resistance and you are not engaged with the reality of the situation. So often, fear is the underlying cause of resistance. Fear usually results in our making up stories about the future and all of the awful things that might happen. Identifying and acknowledging the feelings and recognizing that you are awfulizing the future will help diminish the effect that they have on you. Once you've processed your feelings, you can move forward and become curious. Curiosity helps you identify and consider all of the possible options that could occur as a result of this change. In the absence of curiosity, the mind tends to make up stories that are primarily negative. Recognition that when you are thinking in the future, you are making up stories actually weakens the effect that those stories have on you. From here, you can decide that if you're going to make up stories about the future, you might as well make up really good ones. They're all made up anyway. So focus on what you would like to see happen as a result of the change. To the extent that you can affect outcomes, consider what steps you can take to influence those outcomes. Ask yourself, what will it take for me to move into a place where I am able to fully embrace this change? If your answer is not something you're able to impact, then keep asking until you find a way to participate so that you can actually buy into the change. As your relationship to change starts to shift, you'll begin to notice an increased ability to respond to change in a much more agile way. Instead of spending your time and energy in resistance, you will move quickly into swift, adaptive, and resourceful responses that are essential in moving ahead and in business and in life. If you currently have a resistant relationship to change, practice patience with yourself as you work towards altering that relationship from change resistance to change agility. And remember, there is no need for self-criticism. Thank you. Thank you for joining me, Christine Rozier, and the Irrelevant Leader podcast series. Remember this, you are more extraordinary and capable than you think. To become the leader you aspire to be, you need the right tools and support to assist you in developing and maintaining the characteristics found in great and relevant leaders. That's why I host the Irrelevant Leader podcast, direct the year-long leadership collaborative, and Rozier Leadership Retreats. Visit the website at christinerozier.com, that's spelled R-O-S-I-E-R, to learn more. Check out the podcast page for upcoming live events and interviews with amazing, relevant leaders. If you're not already on the mailing list, then please sign up to join me in this powerful network of exceptional leaders.